Chapter 856, Dueling Feng Huang, 4/4. Translator, Atlas Studios Editor. Gu Zhenren. The two ghost fires moved about here and there. They went far and near, with no set pattern. Feng Huang had to be vigilant of these two flames, while also paying attention to refining Gu. Feng Huang was soon unable to bear it. Bang! A soft explosion resounded as one of the Gu refinement fires she controlled was extinguished. The Gu worm inside the flame had already been refined to an incomplete form, but it was a pity. Everything was lost. First senior sister slipped up. So unfortunate. That Gu worm only had the final 3 steps remaining. Sun Yao stamped her foot in anger. Qin Wan also had a heavy expression. This is the first mistake since the duel began. Although first senior sister has a deep foundation, surely enough, dividing her attention to handle so many things was too forceful. What should she do now? Sun Yao gazed over, seemingly asking for advice. Qin Wan mumbled, "If it were me, I would dispel a refinement path killer move right now. Because the lead is great. As long as I can maintain this lead and make no more mistakes, the one in a hurry would be the other side. But dispelling a killer move is similar to activating it. Because in order to produce a change in the situation, one needs to focus their attention, which can generate a moment of weakness." At this moment, on the stage, Feng Huang also had a similar thought. Should I dispel a refinement path killer move? Is this Fang Yuan's intention? No, I still have a way. I can use my third chance to send out a sonic wave and destroy these 2 ghost fires at once. Geniuses like Feng Huang had pride carved in their very bones and would not be willing to admit defeat. Feng Huang's eyes brightened at this thought, but when she cast her gaze towards Fang Yuan, her heart instantly chilled. Fang Yuan was wearing a malevolent mask. His piercingly cold eyes protruded from behind the holes of the mask. Behind it, there seemed to be a smiling expression with a hint of ridicule. No. Feng Huang's mind trembled at this gaze. This is Fang Yuan's trap. He is already waiting for it. The moment I use my third attack, Fang Yuan will grasp this chance to immediately attack. At that time, my mind would be taxed to the limit, and it will be very difficult for me to deal with the attack. I might not even be able to defend and be struck by his attack. Damn. Feng Huang gritted her teeth. A drop of cold sweat slid down from her forehead to her eyebrow and down her cheek. It can't go on like this. I need to find a way. What should I do? Think carefully, think quickly. Bang. While she was in the process of thinking, another lump of fire she was controlling exploded. This explosion was much more severe than the first one. Other lumps of fire were also affected. Feng Huang quickly dispelled her disorganized thoughts and did her best to stabilize the other fire lumps. First senior sister made a mistake again. How could this be? Not good. First senior sister is injured. Sun Yao cried out with her head in her hands. The demon Fang Yuan brought her too much pressure. First senior sister should have been trying to think of an urgent countermeasure, and this decreased her attention towards the Gu refinement, causing a slip-up. A failure in Gu refinement means there will be backlash. Fortunately, her injuries are not severe. Qin Wan's tone revealed her nervousness. She let out a breath of cloudy air and continued. But this is also a good thing. Sun Yao did not understand and grumbled in anger. Senior sister Qin Wan, what are you saying? First senior sister failed in Gu refinement and also suffered injuries. Why is this a good thing? She has lost 2 lumps of fire, but her mind is instead partially freed up. She now has the spare energy to cope with the present situation. Qin Wan analyzed. Sun Yao patted her chest as she suddenly realized this. Right. Fang Yuan laughed again. Feng Huang's heart immediately sank when she heard Fang Yuan's laughter. She raised her head and sure enough, Fang Yuan took out a 3rd Gu worm. Fang Yuan spoke just like earlier. Look closely. This is a rank 3 ghost fire Gu. The next moment, 3 ghost fires were flying around Feng Huang. Damn it. Damn it. Sun Yao stamped her foot in anger. This demon is too shameless. First senior sister has just been able to catch a breather, and now he sends another ghost fire. He is still thinking of forcing first senior sister to make a mistake. That's right. Qin Wan had a grave expression. Like this, the pressure on first senior sister has increased sharply. She probably has to use all her remaining attention on defending. Sun Yao clenched her teeth. subconsciously waving her fist. This demon is not concentrating on refining his goo. Instead, he is spending his mental energy on the ghost fires. This is a classic case of neglecting the proper task. He is truly terrible. I really want to give him a few punches. Damn it. How can this be? Feng Jinhuang fell into a great predicament. She was clearly in the lead, but when Fang Yuan made a move, she was forced into a passive state. Feng Jinhuang knew the situation was far from good. The tempo of the duel had already fallen into Fang Yuan's grasp. She wanted to counterattack, but she did not have enough ability. The three ghost fires floated around her. Sometimes they would even breach the 1-meter distance before retreating immediately. They were clearly being manipulated to tease Feng Jinhuang. Feng Jinhuang was only a young girl after all. She was filled with fury towards Fang Yuan's teasing, but was not able to vent them. She would have to take a risk if she wanted to get rid of the three hateful ghost fires. But reason told Feng Jinhuang that she might not necessarily need to take the risk, because even after she slipped up twice, she still had a large lead over Fang Yuan as long as she maintained this dominance. Victory would be hers. However, when Feng Jinhuang began refining 4 orifices fire tower goo, a short while later, Fang Yuan also began refining 4 orifices fire tower goo. This discovery immediately startled Feng Jinhuang. When was it that he actually closed in the gap between us? Impossible. He has clearly not used even one refinement path killer move yet. But the fact was that Fang Yuan had relied on just goo refinement techniques, using purely basic skills to close the gap bit by bit, and unknowingly, he had caught up to Feng Jinhuang. The goo masters outside the stage also discovered this. Unbelievable. This demon actually caught up. Spirit Affinity House's female disciples cried out in shock, actually relying on just goo refinement techniques to overcome refinement path killer moves. Fang Yuan's ability far surpasses Feng Jinhuang. The people who overrated Fang Yuan continued to overrate him. How is this possible? Fang Yuan definitely cheated. Everyone knows the power of refinement path killer moves. He did not use a single killer move, but caught up? Impossible. Sun Yao was dissatisfied. What kind of eyes does the hosting elder have? Why is he not stopping the duel and investigating this demon Fang Yuan? Qin Wan, however, heaved a deep sigh. Keep quiet, junior sister. Goo refinement techniques naturally cannot match refinement path killer moves. But in this duel, they can overcome killer moves. Senior sister, what do you mean? Because the crucial factor for victory is not the means, but the 2 goo masters themselves. At the moment, the refinement has already reached the middle to later stages. Fang Yuan's mind is still fresh, while first senior sister has been exerting her mind since the start. The moment she could relax, Fang Yuan used the thread of ghost fire goo to overwhelm her. First senior sister is already tired, without ample energy in her mind. Any powerful refinement path killer moves will only play a secondary role, thus her goo refinement speed will naturally slow down. Qin Wan sighed. Before continuing, this is all Fang Yuan's plan. When first senior sister mentioned refining 5 orifices fire pagoda goo as the task, he agreed directly. But the goo recipes and the refinement materials were all put forward by him. The moment this battle of attrition began, he let himself fall behind, preserving his mental energy. At the middle stages, he finally attacked, and although he was behind, he was able to grasp the initiative. Because of her dominance, first senior sister did not want to take a risk, thus she kept delaying dealing with them. However, she did not know that this was Fang Yuan's sinister plan. Now at the later stages, first senior sister is too tired, her speed is getting slower, and will soon be overtaken by Fang Yuan. What? Sun Yao worriedly gazed towards the stage. Soon, her worry turned into reality. Fang Yuan slowly progressed to being level with Feng Jinhuang, and slowly overtook her. Is first senior sister going to lose? Sun Yao's eyes reddened and tears streamed out. First senior sister clearly put in so much effort to arrive at the end. She even got injured. But this despicable demon is going to win? I am not willing to accept this. I also feel discontent. Qin Wan sighed. But first senior sister still has a chance. There is still a chance. Sun Yao turned her head and looked happily at her senior sister Qin Wan. Qin Wan nodded. Right. Don't forget first senior sister still has 3 chances to attack. 1 rank 3 attack, 1 rank 4 attack, and 1 rank 5 attack. Every attack will be stronger than the previous one. This is the way to make a comeback. This contest has yet to end. There is still hope. Right, we still have hope. First senior sister, you can do it. Sun Yao's eyes brightened as she suddenly shouted loudly. Her voice attracted the gazes of the people nearby. The intense sense of honor to the sect and feeling of belonging made the hundreds of disciples of Spirit Affinity House shout together to boost Feng Jinhuang's morale. Although their voices could not transmit to the stage, Feng Jinhuang was able to sense it. These guys. I cannot lose. I will win. It is time to use my trump card. Refinement Path Killer Move. Ink Transformation. Feng Jinhuang shouted in her mind, and simultaneously made 3 attacks in a row towards Fang Yuan. Feng Jinhuang staked everything on this, using all her remaining chances to attack. Paltry trick. Fang Yuan blocked all these attacks, while sending out the 3 ghost fires to interfere with her as much as possible. The interference did not bring much result. Feng Jinhuang destroyed these 3 ghost fires. Her refinement path killer move was already close to completion. Humph, revealing light goo go. Fang Yuan sneered inwardly as he flicked out a rank 4 goo worm at the same time. He also used a rank 5 attack which arrived in front of Feng Jinhuang first. Feng Jinhuang was already prepared, blocking the rank 5 attack, but revealing light goo, which had neared her, suddenly self-detonated. The explosion was not intense, but the radiance was extremely dazzling. How? How does he know the weakness of ink transformation? Under Feng Jinhuang's incredulous gaze, the killer move, ink transformation, was interrupted and forcefully stopped. The killer move did not successfully activate. The severe backlash from it immediately caused Feng Jinhuang's organs to be damaged, causing large amounts of blood to flow out of her body. Her body trembled from the intense pain, and she was no longer able to maintain her control over the lumps of fire. The whole goo refinement failed, and bursts of enormous backlash assaulted her. Feng Jinhuang spat out fresh blood as she opened her mouth widely, before falling down to the ground shortly. Losing consciousness, chaos erupted outside the stage. Spirit Affinity House's disciples wanted to go up the stage, but were blocked by the goo formation. Don't make disturbances. All violators will be punished. The hosting elder shouted. After stabilizing the situation, he gazed towards Fang Yuan. For a moment, almost everyone outside the stage looked towards Fang Yuan. Feng Jinhuang was already unconscious. Even if she woke up and tried to refine the goo again, the materials were far from enough. Right now, Fang Yuan could not lose. As long as he slowly refined 5 orifices fire pagoda goo, he would be the victor. However, right when Fang Yuan was about to succeed, the incomplete form of the goo worm in his hand suddenly detonated. Fang Yuan was startled. This. Chapter 857. Fang Zheng's Death. Chapter 857. Fang Zheng's Death. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Gu Zhenren. Fang Yuan and Feng Jinhuang's duel attracted the attentions of countless people, but the result was one that nobody anticipated. The process of the duel was very splendid. It was full of ups and downs. Eventually, even though Fang Yuan had absolute advantage, he met with the failure rate of a rank 5 goo refinement, and his efforts went down the drain. He did not have enough goo refinement materials for a second attempt, while Feng Jinhuang already had fainted and also did not have enough materials. Thus, this duel ended in a draw. Feng Jinhuang was sent for treatment immediately after the duel ended. After learning about the results, Feng Jinhuang looked at Fang Yuan with deep meaning. Since it was a draw, according to the duel rules, both parties had 2 options. One was to take back their wagers, the other was to trade the wagers that they had put in. As Fang Yuan had expected, Feng Jinhuang chose the second option. Fang Yuan thought about it for a moment before agreeing. Feng Jinhuang first passed 1 information path goo worm over to Fang Yuan personally. The method of an immortal zombie reviving was recorded inside the goo. After that, both parties created an agreement in the capacity of a subsidiary force of Immortal Crane Sect, the owner of who Immortal Blessed Land, Fang Yuan, agreed to undergo guts goo transactions with Spirit Affinity House. In the future, Fang Yuan would give priority to Spirit Affinity House when selling guts goo. Even Immortal Crane Sect was behind them in the priority list. Lord Fang Yuan, our sect's Lord Feng Yang would like to speak with you. After the duel ended, an Immortal Crane Sect elder came to Fang Yuan. He spoke in a humble manner. Oh? Fang Yuan said with surprise. Lead the way. On a mountain peak with no one else around, he met Feng Yuan again. Feng Yuan still had the appearance of a youth. He wore a white robe with a black belt. The winds were blowing his sleeves as they fluttered in the air. His green eyebrows extended to his waist as they swayed with the wind as well. It was not easy to get a draw in this duel, was it? Feng Yang's gaze was profound. He looked at Fang Yuan. Fang Yuan smiled. It can't be helped. I encountered the natural rate of failure. There was nothing I could do. His words carried no flaws. Feng Yang sized up Fang Yuan as he said in a serious tone. It is a pity that you became a zombie despite such talent and refinement path. Actually, if you want to find a way to revive, you do not need to approach others. Immortal Crane Sect has an excellent method that can ensure that you will get rid of your zombie status. Fang Yuan heard this and felt a bit strange. Why did he feel like Feng Yang was showing an intention of recruiting him? But thinking about it, even if Fang Yuan and Immortal Crane Sect had been on opposing sides, or he had a mysterious background, or some other reasons, ignoring all these, just Fang Yuan's current display of his Gu refinement attainment was enough to move Immortal Crane Sect. Fang Yuan naturally knew the excellent method that Feng Yang was talking about. What else could it be? It was obviously the possession technique. Feng Yang would not be able to guess that Fang Yuan had already made preparations in this aspect. If I would lose my freedom, I would rather remain as a zombie. Fang Yuan said. Feng Yang shook his head. I invited you here not to discuss the matter of freedom. Let's talk about important matters. You captured your brother. You have to hand him over. Otherwise, the consequences are not something you can endure. Oh? Is this a threat? Fang Yuan's tone became deeper. Fang Zheng was a secondary option to regain life. Even if you did not need him for this, Fang Zheng was still the best choice to create a blood deity. How could Fang Yuan hand him over? Feng Yang nodded. You can think of this as a threat, but I would rather explain it as a warning. I'll speak the truth. Eliminating Fang Zheng is Heavenly Court's orders. You might not know the extent of Heavenly Court's authority, but you just need to know one thing. There is no force in Central Continent that can defy Heavenly Court. How could Fang Yuan not know the power of Heavenly Court? He had his previous life's memories. He was even more aware of Heavenly Court's strength and power than Feng Yang. Of course I know about Heavenly Court, but why would they have any interest in Fang Zheng? They are actually so serious about eliminating a mortal? Isn't your excuse too unrealistic? Feng Yang, how can you convince me? Fang Yuan spread his arms out. Feng Yang sighed. I do not need to convince you. As long as you keep Fang Zheng's life, in the end, who immortal blessed land will be taken down and absorbed by Heavenly Court. That is not something Immortal Crane Sect wants to see. You can consider this freely, but there is little time. If you can accept it, 3 days from now, give Fang Zheng to me. Fang Yuan frowned deeply. This unexpected news caught him off guard. He did not know about the matter involving fake Gu. It was hard for him to link Heavenly Court and Fang Zheng together. He placed his gaze on Feng Yang's face. He tried to find a flaw from his expression. Do you take me for a fool? Handing Fang Zheng to you is like placing the key to who immortal blessed land into your hands. Feng Yang raised his head and laughed. Fang Yuan, despite being an immortal zombie, you are truly scheming. No need to test me. The truth is, you have already started believing me. I am actually more curious than you about this. But we should curb our own curiosity regarding matters relating to Heavenly Court. 3 days later, I will execute Fang Zheng in front of you. But in exchange, you have to bring me Lord Sky Crane's soul intact. You should know that he is one of my subordinates and is a rather capable one. Fang Yuan became silent. Feng Yang did not stay. A light flashed, and he vanished on the spot. Since Feng Yang left, Fang Yuan had no reason to stay. He decided to use fixed immortal travel to return to Hu immortal blessed land. He had temporarily set aside the matter regarding Fang Zheng. Fang Yuan's first priority now was to research the method that Feng Jinhuang gave him. Fairy Lian Xiang? What was unexpected to Fang Yuan was that this method to revive was connected to a fairy of spirit affinity house from a previous generation. Fairy Lian Xiang was a past generation fairy of spirit affinity house. Her status was similar to Mo Yao. According to Feng Jinhuang, when Fairy Lian Xiang was rank 5, she was ambushed by an enemy and became a zombie. But she had one of the 10 extreme physiques, the desolate ancient moon physique. Through a fortunate opportunity, she succeeded in her immortal ascension. Her zombie body was purified by the heavenly tribulation and earthly calamity. It was as though she was reborn. The last bit of content was deduced by many of Spirit Affinity House's Gu immortals to get rid of the zombie body. A way to revive was to undergo immortal ascension as one of the 10 extreme physiques. Immortal ascension of the 10 extreme physiques? Fang Yuan was a little disappointed. This method was not impossible to him. He had blood skull goo. He could raise a goo master's aptitude. First Jin Gyu was an example which Fang Yuan could learn from, but blood skull goo was only immortal goo. Even if Fang Yuan had many descendants and killed them, it could not raise the aptitude of an immortal zombie like Fang Yuan. However, if I can advance blood skull goo to an immortal goo, it will work on me. I can use blood skull immortal goo to elevate my first aperture into the desolate ancient moon aperture. If I undergo immortal ascension after that, I would likely revive. But to raise blood skull goo into an immortal goo, I would need blood skull goo's immortal goo recipe. It would expend a lot of time and effort to attempt this. Even if I can raise my aptitude to the level of the 10 extreme physiques, the tribulation would likely be extremely dangerous. According to Feng Jinhuang's information, when Fairy Lian Xiang underwent immortal ascension, it was a terrifying event. It was almost equivalent to the grand tribulation of a rank 7 goo immortal. Most likely, the immortal ascension of a zombie was too heaven-defying. It attracted the rage of heaven. Back then, if not for the help of several goo immortals from Spirit Affinity House, Fairy Lian Xiang would have been reduced to ashes by the grand tribulation. The immortal ascension of one of the 10 extreme physiques was already very terrifying. Fang Yuan had witnessed He Lu Lan's ascension. She even lost an immortal goo due to it. After a person of the 10 extreme physiques becomes a zombie and attempts to become an immortal, the tribulation would be even fiercer. Its intensity would rise by over a dozen times. Fang Yuan concluded that this method not only required huge amounts of preparation, it would also expend a lot of time and energy, as well as carry great risks. Without help from others, with Fang Yuan's strength, even if he included the assistance of Tai Bai Yunxing, He Lu Lan, and Fairy Li Shan, it would not succeed. Weighing the cost and benefits, Fang Yuan could only place this method aside. He entered the prison cell of Dang Hun Palace. He saw Fang Zheng, who was locked inside. Fang Yuan, what are you trying to do? Seeing his brother, Fang Zheng screamed, his gaze filled with hatred. Fang Yuan said, "Why? Are you still denying it?" Fang Zheng shouted, "Even if Immortal Crane sect and master are responsible, you are still the biggest culprit. You are the person who slaughtered uncle and aunt. I will never forgive you. I will never let you off. Kill me, or else we will always be enemies." "Oh, my beloved brother, you are really stubborn." In that case, Fang Yuan's gaze shined. He stretched out his arm towards Fang Zheng. Soul search. Fang Zheng's body shook. He could not move anymore. He wanted to shout, but he felt like his throat was stuck. He showed an anguished expression on his face. Fang Yuan searched Fang Zheng's soul multiple times, but he did not find anything of value. Fang Zheng is such an ordinary goo master. Why is Heavenly Court sending orders to eliminate him specifically? Fang Yuan fell into deep thought. Even though there was no evidence, he felt inclined to believe that Feng Yang was speaking the truth. Fang Yuan did not know that Heavenly Court had fate immortal goo. Even though he had his previous life's memories, he was restricted by his status. He could not know everything. Especially when the strongest organization in the 5 regions, Heavenly Court, was involved. Did someone do something to Fang Zheng's soul? Fang Yuan shook his head immediately after. That was very unlikely, but he could not deny the slim possibility of it. Should I hand over Fang Zheng or not? This was the question. Fang Yuan was not afraid of Feng Yang, but he was wary of Immortal Crane sect and was worried about Heavenly Court. If any of the rank 8 goo immortals in Heavenly Court attacked, killing him would be as easy as killing an ant. Of course, that was if they battled. Fang Yuan was not so foolish to get into one. He could escape and run away beforehand. Fixed immortal travel was an excellent method to do so. 3 days later, Fang Yuan handed over Fang Zheng and the spirit incubating flea. Within it was Lord Sky Crane's soul. Fang Zheng had evidently been tortured. He went through lots of terrifying punishment. Not only was his skin torn and flesh exposed, he even had many deep wounds that revealed his bones. In fact, one of his arms was cut off and replaced with a dog's limb. Even so, Fang Zheng could feel the dog limb and even manipulate it to move. Such cruel treatment could make someone collapse mentally. But Feng Yang only took a glance without saying anything. He said to Fang Yuan, "You made a wise choice. Now, hold up your end of the agreement." Fang Yuan's gaze was shining. "Watch closely." Feng Yang struck. Under Fang Yuan's supervision, he killed Fang Zheng on the spot. Fire burned until not a single trace of him was left. "Lord Feng Yang, why? You promised me." Lord Sky Crane's voice came from the spirit incubating flea. "This is an order from Heavenly Court. Immortal Crane sect needs Fang Zheng's sacrifice. Sky Crane, this is your destiny. You wanted to possess Fang Zheng at first, but you relented and were willing to accompany him and teach him how to cultivate. Now he is dead. Not a trace of his soul is left. As compensation for going back on my words, I will find a good body for you to revive. Feng Yuan said slowly. Lord Sky Crane's crying voice could be heard. Feng Yuan waved his sleeves. He sucked the spirit incubating flea into his sleeve as he took a look at Feng Yuan before leaving. When you are free, you can come to Feihe Mountain and have a look. Chapter 858, Second Place. Right now, I can confirm that Feng Yuan is expressing goodwill to me. Feng Yuan had a realization. Feng Yuan invited Feng Yuan personally to take a look at Feihe Mountain. What was Feihe Mountain? It was the base of Immortal Crane sect, even though it was somewhat symbolic. The meaning he was trying to express was clear. After returning to Immortal Blessed Land, Feng Yuan thought about Feng Yang's change in attitude and smiled silently. The duel with Feng Jinhuang allowed Feng Yuan and Spirit Affinity House to establish contact for trade. The transactions of Gutsgu with Spirit Affinity House were higher in priority than Immortal Crane sect. But because it took advantage of the setup of Central Continent's Refinement Path Convention, everyone bore witness to it. Immortal Crane sect could not make up any excuses or complaints to stop these important transactions. Immortal Blessed Land and Spirit Affinity House had made contact. This made Immortal Crane sect feel a strong sense of threat. In history, among the 10 sects, Spirit Affinity House had the highest rate of recruiting demonic Pathgu immortals. Boqing and Feng Jiugu were examples that were etched into people's hearts. Not long ago, they had failed to take back Immortal Blessed Land. Now that Feng Yuan was showing strong attainment in Refinement Path, Immortal Crane sect finally decided to persuade Feng Yuan in a more gentle way. Thus, Feng Yang's attitude towards Feng Yuan changed drastically. The matter of Feng Zheng should be real. Feng Yang's action was a sign of goodwill to Feng Yuan. He even tried to entice Feng Yuan using the possession technique. To him, if Feng Yuan continued to keep Feng Zheng in captivity, Heavenly Court would take down Immortal Blessed Land. Dang Hun Mountain would definitely be taken by them in that case if Feng Yuan did not destroy it in advance. Immortal Blessed Land could not be moved, and Heavenly Court was not interested in it anyway. One of the 10 great ancient sects might get to inherit it, but it would depend on internal competition between the sects under Heavenly Court to determine which one obtained it. Evidently, the Gu immortals from Immortal Crane sect that were in Heavenly Court were weaker in power compared to the others. It was unlikely that they could take back Immortal Blessed Land, even if they took it back. Without Dang Hun Mountain, Immortal Blessed Land's value would be greatly diminished. No matter how they looked at it, this went against Feng Yang and Immortal Crane sect's benefits. Thus, Feng Yang informed Feng Yuan of this matter. It was a way to defend his own benefits. Right now, I am a subsidiary force of Immortal Crane sect on paper, but I am actually placing myself between Spirit Affinity House and Immortal Crane sect. This has allowed my external pressure to reduce by more than half. Feng Yuan heaved a sigh to himself. In truth, Feng Yuan had been planning for such a situation. He ignored Feng Jinhuang's challenge earlier, but he later sent a message and agreed to the duel. Why was that? It was because he wanted to make use of Spirit Affinity House to resist the pressure from Immortal Crane sect. Feng Yuan had achieved his intended outcome, but the crucial factor was not him. It was the allure of Gutsgu itself. Feng Yuan seized Immortal Blessed Land. It greatly incited Feng Jinhuang and caused her to find out Dreamwing's Immortal Gu's true ability in advance. Because Feng Jinhuang used Dreamwings, she obtained many benefits and placed greater importance on Gutsgu. If not for that, why would Spirit Affinity House allow Feng Yuan to make use of them? They were not fools. Indeed, Feng Yuan purposely made the duel a draw. He wanted to show an agreeable attitude to Spirit Affinity House. To Feng Yuan, this duel changed his circumstances in Central Continent. It greatly reduced his pressure and gave him more time and energy to make bigger plans. Of course, once the secret that Feng Yuan was the culprit of 88 True Young Buildings' collapse gets exposed, Central Continent would definitely be stirred up. Feng Yuan would be wanted by everyone. He would need to escape for his life. From Feng Jinhuang's perspective, even though she was injured and did not win in the duel, she was the biggest winner. With Gutsgu's help from now on, she would be able to use Dreamwing's Immortal Gu and improve drastically. Her speed would surpass practically all Gu immortals. She would grow rapidly. In my previous life, I killed Feng Jinhuang, but now, it seems that I am aiding her. Towards this, Feng Yuan felt deeply moved. but there was no point expressing this to others. Fang Yuan, the matter has been settled. If there is nothing else, I will leave first. Tai Bai Yunxing came to say his goodbyes. These last days, he had been moving around northern plains, finding a suitable location to place his blessed land. He had found a location already, and was about to place it down, but at the crucial moment, Fang Yuan asked him to return. Thank you for your help just now. You chose a good location. Go ahead and blend your heaven and earth qi. When the calamity comes, I will lend you a hand. Fang Yuan said to Tai Bai Yunxing. Tai Bai Yunxing nodded. He went to northern plains using a stargate. After obtaining star form blessed land, Fang Yuan received a huge stock of starlight firefly goo. He no longer had to save up on the number of times stargates were used. Fang Yuan came to the prison cell and saw Guyu Fangzheng again. Wasn't Guyu Fangzheng killed by Feng Yang already? Why was he alive here? As it turns out, this was just a show by Fang Yuan. He purposely cut off an arm from Guyu Fangzheng, fitting a dog limb onto it. He was trying to create a false appearance of abuse and humiliation. In truth, he kept the severed limb here. When Feng Yang killed Fangzheng, Fang Yuan asked Tai Bai Yunxing to use man as before immortal goo, expending a considerable amount of immortal essence on the severed arm. Reviving Fangzheng. Feng Yang did not suspect anything. He had limited knowledge. He did not know that an immortal goo like man as before existed. From his perspective, Fangzheng's body and soul were destroyed in front of him. Thus Fangzheng was definitely dead. Any other goo immortal would think the same. This was common sense. But the world was huge. There were bound to be rare and strange immortal goo, or immortal killer moves, like man as before. Nobody could know them all, because humans had limited knowledge. Even immortals were no exception. Omnipotence and omniscience, even rank 9 goo immortals or Renzu could not achieve that. To reach that stage, maybe only one grand existence could achieve it. That was the world. Fang Yuan tossed an information path goo worm to Fangzheng. He showed a mocking expression as he said, "Take a good look. This is the immortal crane sect that you are so grateful towards, and that kind-hearted master of yours. If it were not for me, you would be dead already." "Impossible. I won't believe your lies." Fangzheng screamed, but he still held this information path goo worm in his hands. In this goo worm, the video of Feng Yang killing Fangzheng as well as his conversation with Lord Sky Crane's soul were recorded. After looking at it, Fangzheng broke the information path goo worm into pieces. He fell into immeasurable rage. He raised his head and screamed. His expression contorted as he pointed at Fang Yuan, shouting, "Impossible. This is all fake. You made this up. I will not believe it. I will never believe it. You lied to me. You are lying. Unless I see it for myself, hear it for myself, and get Master's reply, you will witness it all. But now is not the time yet." Fang Yuan turned around, leaving the room. He shut the cell as the room went into complete darkness. Fangzheng was still screaming in the darkness. He ran around in the tiny room and punched and kicked the walls, venting his emotions. After settling the matter regarding Fangzheng, Fang Yuan progressed smoothly in the refinement path convention without any problems. Since he eliminated some of the truly skilled goo refinement experts early, it made the later rounds much easier for him. Eventually, Feng Jinhuang got 6th place, while Fang Yuan reached the finals. He faced the strongest competitor in this competition, Yimu Chun. In this battle, Fang Yuan lost completely, even though the task was still the same as his previous life. And Fang Yuan had a huge advantage of knowing it in advance, but his opponent, Yimu Chun, was a true refinement path quasi-great grandmaster. This level was terrifying. Even though Feng Jinhuang had Dreamwing's immortal goo, she could not reach this stage easily. The higher the level of attainment went in each path, the more difficulty one would face in trying to raise it. In history, only the 3 olds of refinement path could reach the highest point. Right now in Northern Plains, there were only 4 people who were publicly known to match or surpass him. They were the 4 refinement path experts of Northern Plains. Fang Yuan knew deeply, even if he had the advantage of knowing the task, he could not defeat Yimu Chun. This was the difference in level. Speaking of which, Yimu Chun wore nearly the same thing as Fang Yuan. He wore a black robe that covered his entire body, as well as a mask on his face. In Fang Yuan's previous life, he got 1st place. There were no surprises. His ability was truly unfathomable. Fang Yuan forfeited without competing. Many people were unhappy and blamed him. After all, refinement path attainment level was hard to assess. Even though Yimu Chun was very strong, Fang Yuan was also an extremely favored contestant. Forfeiting without a fight, the spectators who were looking forward to the final round felt unhappy. They were complaining and claiming that Fang Yuan's forfeiture was rigged. But no matter what, Fang Yuan, who reached second place, obtained his original goal. He obtained a success mark. After that, the representatives from Immortal Crane sect and the other 9 great ancient sects came to Fang Yuan, attempting to buy his mark. This success mark could not be traded or given away. Even though Heavenly Court tried many times, they had never succeeded. The 10 great ancient sects naturally did not have any intention to seize it. They only tried to make a deal with him. After all, with Fang Yuan's incredible Gu refinement techniques and over-evaluation on everyone's part, asking him to refine a rank 6 immortal Gu would use up this success mark in exchange for no failure rate. No matter how high of a price the 10 sects of Central Continent offered, Fang Yuan rejected them all. Returning to immortal blessed land, he started preparing for the refinement of change form immortal Gu. Ever since Fang Yuan started the plan of refining change form immortal Gu, he had been gathering the materials for it. Because he had the success mark, he only needed 1 set of Gu refinement materials. This greatly reduced the cost that he had to bear. Even so, after Fang Yuan collected all of the ingredients, he had already sold or traded most of the immortal materials that he had obtained from the Northern Plains auction. If not for the refinement path convention filling up the gap in materials, he would still be lacking in some of them. The difficulty of refining an immortal Gu could be easily seen. Fang Yuan only had to prepare 1 set of materials, but it expended almost all of his current accumulated resources. If not for the Guts Gu trade and success mark, Fang Yuan would not take a risk and undergo such a gamble. Chapter 859, Refining Immortal Gu. Central Continent, Truyang Mountain Range. The setting sun was like blood, shining down on the uneven mountain range. On a dangerous mountain peak here, a hairy man was climbing enthusiastically. Master, master, wait for me. The hairy man climbed as he shouted. Unlike most other hairy men, this hairy man had a different sort of intelligence in his eyes. He spoke just like ordinary humans. He was chasing after Yumu-chun along the mountain range. During the Central Continent Refinement Path Convention, this young hairy man had been taking notice of Yumu-chun. When the Central Continent Refinement Path Convention ended, Yumu-chun got first place and the hairy man had been following after him. All along to this place, this hairy man was strong and muscular, but he could not catch up to Yumu-chun. Why Yumu-chun had entered Truyang Mountain Range after the convention ended. The hairy man followed behind him, shouting and chasing. Along the way, he suffered a lot and was covered in dust and injuries. Master, wait for me. The hairy man climbed onto the mountain peak, but he stared blankly. How can this be? Master was still at the mountain peak earlier. How could he be at the base of the mountain so quickly? What Gu worm did he use? Seeing that the distance he had desperately shrunk and had extended, the hairy man was anxious. He quickly went down the mountain, but he missed a step and lost his footing, rolling down the mountain slope. Thankfully, there were thick branches that broke his fall. Even so, he was crying and screaming as he rolled down until partway down the mountain. His body was bleeding, and he suffered fractures everywhere. The pain in his body was far less than the pain in his heart. If I miss this opportunity, it will be hard to find Master again. The hairy man was crying. He struggled to get up, but he could not. He raised his head in desperation. Master, please take pity on this junior and come back. Boo-hoo-hoo. His voice was very weak. After his soft pleas, he started sobbing profusely. But when his tears flowed out, his body shook. He saw that out of nowhere, a pair of legs were in front of him. He looked up along the legs, joyfully seeing that Yumu-chun had turned back and was standing in front of him, observing him. The hairy man quickly knelt down. Master, master, you finally meet me. Yumu-chun sighed. His voice was deep and grave as he said, Bin Duo-e. Years ago, I only gave you a few pointers casually. You and I are not fated to be master and disciple. The hairy man, Bin Duo-e, heard this and cried out. He gathered strength from nowhere and jumped, hugging Yumu-chun's leg. Master, oh master. Even if you are unwilling to admit you are my master, but from your instructions, I was enlightened, escaping from ignorance. I broke through my limits and my refinement attainment reached an unforeseen level. Even though you only said a few words, this gratitude is deeper than the sea. You changed my fate. Thus in my heart, you are forever my master. Yumu-chun stretched out his arm. He rubbed the hairy man named Bin Duo-e's head. Back then, I only gave you pointers because I saw that you were wiser than normal hairy men. You had greater cognitive abilities. But it is for your sake that I am not making you my disciple. I am a person who has escaped from fate. Being associated with me will only bring you harm. From now on, you are not allowed to tell others that I had once given you pointers, otherwise, you will definitely die a terrible death. Remember this. You have to remember this. Disciple understands. Bin Duo-e nodded his head quickly. Why Yimu Chun snorted. Eh? Bin Duo-e quickly changed his words. I remember it. I remember it. Master Yimu Chun, please take me in. I am not qualified to be your disciple, but I can be your follower or slave. I am very diligent and witty. You praised me before. I will be very loyal and serve you with all my heart. Yimu Chun shook his head and smiled bitterly. Oh you. Forget it. You have traveled through 30 mountains and encountered much hardship in pursuing me. It is very rare to see such determination and perseverance. Bin Duo-e, remember this. Your most outstanding merit is that you have unique intelligence. Man is the spirit of all beings, but even as a hairy man, your intelligence is not inferior to humans. But you cannot rely on this excessively. After all, a swimmer can always drown if he is careless. You must remember your own sincerity and perseverance. Get up. Master, if you do not agree, I will not get up. Bin Duo-e shouted. Ah. Suddenly, his arms grabbed air. Even though they were holding on to Yimu Chun's legs earlier, a formless force was repelling him. He could only watch as Yimu Chun floated into the air, moving up towards the sky. Bin Duo-e, our relationship, formed by fortuitous chance, ends here. Today is the last day we will ever meet. Now, I will give you your final lesson. It is a parting gift. Watch closely. In the air, Yimu Chun's voice could be heard. Bin Duo-e looked up quickly. He watched with anticipation. Central continent, Earth abyss, inside star form blessed land. The night sky was gentle. A cool wind was blowing. Fang Yuan looked at the stars in the sky of the blessed land. They were giving off dim starlight. It was complete silence. Fang Yuan looked down slowly, retracting his gaze from the vast sky, onto the huge turtle shell in front of him. This was not an ordinary turtle shell. It was the shell of a desolate beast turtle. At this moment, the shell was upside down, like a bowl, with the shell being full of poisonous blood. The poisonous blood was collected from who immortal blessed land's earthly calamity. Now, in order to refine change form immortal goo, that could be used. I can finally start refining change form immortal goo. Fang Yuan let out a breath of foggy air. The matter of refining change form immortal goo is top secret. Fang Yuan did not tell a single person. Even Tai Bai Yunxing, Pei Lulan, and Fairy Li Shan were kept in the dark. They had no idea. As for star form blessed land, it had been closed long ago, because the blessed land was inside Earth abyss. During this time period, nobody came here. It was a safe place. Safety was very important. Refining immortal goo was not easy to begin with. It could be said to be filled with difficulties. There were too many external influences that could affect the immortal goo refinement process. If he made even a single mistake, the extremely valuable immortal materials would be wasted, along with all his hard work. Thus, he needed a quiet and safe environment to refine immortal goo. Even though Fang Yuan had a success mark and could reduce the natural rate of failure when refining a rank 6 immortal goo to 0. What if during the process of refinement, Fang Yuan made a technical error? It was incredibly important to find an environment like star form blessed land which could be relied upon to be undisturbed. Otherwise, if Fang Yuan failed the refinement, he would have no one else to blame but himself, even though he was going to start. Fang Yuan still took half a day to condition his mind and body before starting. When he felt his soul was replenished and at its peak condition, unable to become any better, he finally started. His eyes shined with a brilliant light. Countless ghost fires burned under the turtle shell. At once, the surroundings burned with eerie fire. The temperature of an enormous area around him fell rapidly. Inside the turtle shell, the poisonous blood had no reactions. Central continent, Truyang mountain range. Bin Duo-e was just raising his head to look, but he got stunned. At this moment, his eyes widened to a ridiculous size. He had thought that Yimu Chun's final lesson was to impart him some unique goo refinement techniques or some strong refinement path. Killer moves. But he did not think that Yimu Chun would stand in the air, waving his hand as he scattered some dazzling specks of light. These specks of light were pure and bright. Bin Duo-e's eyes were tearing up. Just as he felt dizzy, he heard Yimu Chun's words. Bin Duo-e, this is the final lesson. Open your eyes and watch. Learn as much as you can. All right, I am going to refine an immortal goo now. Immortal goo. Bin Duo-e's heart shuddered. He opened his mouth. His jaws were open so wide they almost dislocated. Refine immortal goo? He stammered. He could not understand what was going on. He was uncertain. Why was Master Yimu Chun taking such a huge risk? Even though Ben Duo-e was not a goo refinement expert, he knew that it was hard to refine immortal goo. Before refining the immortal goo, one needed to condition their body and mind to get themselves into peak condition, while clearing their mind and being extremely aware of the goo refinement procedures. But Yimu Chun did not do that. After the refinement path convention ended, he entered Truyang mountain range, moving along the area and did not rest once. And he was refining goo in this place. Truyang mountain range was a very dangerous place. The environment that you refined goo in was very important. Even a 3-year-old knew that. Right now, Ben Duo-e was very worried. If they attracted desolate beasts during the goo refinement, or even ancient desolate beasts, what would they do? And this was not the most troublesome part. In comparison to desolate beasts and ancient desolate beasts, goo immortals were the biggest threats. Because of Song Zixing, Truyang mountain range had many goo immortals now. They were searching and trying to locate Song Zixing. On one hand, they could beat him while he was down, while also completing the secret missions of their respective sects for great rewards. Yimu Chun did not pay attention to Ben Duo-e's thoughts. How worried or nervous he was. He had a composed and grand attitude. He moved his hands gracefully. At once, light shone up to a few hundred meters in height. Clouds were gathering and forming layers in the sky. Winds blew, the grass on the mountain swayed. Beautiful flowers gave off the fragrant scents of nature. Central continent, starform blessed land. An hour passed. In the huge turtle shell, the poisonous blood was boiling. It gave off bubbling noises. In the sky above the poisonous blood, a huge wave of poisonous gas was moving around, forming a thick and black poisonous fog. As Fang Yuan increased the heat, the poisonous fog started to spread. It corroded the surrounding grass and flowers, causing them to die. Fang Yuan did not care about this. He had prepared meticulously. There were layers of goo formations in the surroundings. The poisonous gas could not spread far. They were limited to this area, a 1,000-year bitter shell. Fang Yuan looked at the boiling poisonous blood as he stretched out a monstrous arm in request. Here, Master. At the next moment, Starform Land Spirit appeared with the 1,000-year bitter shell, handing it to Fang Yuan. In order to refine change form immortal goo, Starform Land Spirit had turned into free labor for Fang Yuan. During the entire process, he was Fang Yuan's assistant. Chapter 860, Nature Goo Refinement Technique. Bitter shells lived in deep waters. Taking in the sand and rocks in the water, they could melt the sediments and turn them into bitter water. If someone opened the shell and obtained this bitter water, using it to brew wine, they would get bitter shell wine. Its taste is very unique, bitter and fragrant. Fang Yuan had once obtained a bitter shell. He opened it and used the bitter water to create bitter wine, before using that to refine the liquor worm. Bitter shells were quite rare already, but 1,000-year bitter shells were even rarer. It was a good material to refine immortal goo. Fang Yuan's bitter shell was a 1,000-year bitter shell. It was black and had circular loops of white markings, like tree rings. The alternating black and white color was very eye-catching. Fang Yuan looked at the fire below the turtle shell. As for the 1,000-year bitter shell in his hand, he threw it in without looking. Refining immortal goo was very important. All of the immortal materials had to be checked. Fang Yuan had already checked them many times. The ingredients had no problems. Thus, when Fang Yuan was refining goo, he did not need to distract himself and inspect the immortal materials. He only needed to check the flame's intensity. After tossing in the 1,000-year bitter shell, the poisonous blood no longer boiled, but the poisonous gas was still rumbling, like there was a black python coiling around inside. An intense, foul odor was created. Fang Yuan did not move. He was engulfed in the foul odor, sniffing it attentively. Although he was an immortal zombie and did not have any sense of smell, he had investigative killer moves to help him smell things. This odor was hard to describe. It was absolutely disgusting. Fang Yuan wanted to vomit. His head was dizzy from smelling it. But Fang Yuan had to persevere, because this odor was one of the signs of whether the goo refinement was successful, whether the 1,000-year bitter shell melted perfectly into it. Soon, the 1,000-year bitter shell that Fang Yuan tossed in completely melted. The black poisonous fog stopped rumbling, while the poisonous blood boiled again. Fang Yuan tossed in a second, then a third 1,000-year bitter shell one by one. After a total of 12 bitter shells were melted, The poisonous fog was extremely thick. The intense foul odor started to smell fragrant. Fang Yuan's expression became more serious and stern. Twin Ice Heart. A hairy man, Ben Duo E, shouted. Even though he was only a rank 5 Gu master, he had an extraordinary refinement path attainment level. Thus, he had broad vision and could recognize the immortal material that Yu Chun took out. Ben Duo, he had an expression of shock that a thumb-sized ice heart was already an immortal material. But the ice heart that Yu Chun took out was as large as a basin. Not only was it big, the crucial thing was that this ice heart had a special appearance. Within it were 2 conjoined pieces of heart-shaped ice. This was a twin ice heart. It was 100 times rarer than ordinary ice hearts. Ordinary ice hearts were rank 6 immortal materials. They could create rank 6 immortal goo. Meanwhile, twin ice hearts were immortal materials that could refine ranked 7 immortal goo. Such a valuable immortal material. He actually took it out first. Evidently, the twin ice heart is not the main material for this goo. It is only a supplementary material. Master is really amazing. I have no idea what goo he is trying to refine. Ben Duo, he had a look of admiration and adoration at the same time. He finally relaxed. Such a precious material was used. It seemed that Master Yu Chun was prepared. He was not casually refining this goo. But Ben Duo, he thought. Yu Chun was here in the middle of nowhere refining a precious immortal goo in the open. Was this because Yu Chun was stupid? Or was he extremely daring and fearless from his skill? Ben Duo, he could not come to a conclusion. The surrounding winds were getting stronger. Soon, the winds gathered into a tornado. The tornadoes were separated by a certain distance. They did not crash into one another. It resembled a scene of a forest of tornadoes that while Yu Chun floated in the air. In between the tornado forest, the winds were wild. As his bronze mask was blown away, revealing an aged face which was full of hair, that while Yu Chun laughed loudly. His body shook as the black robe on him tore. The pieces of fabric flew away, showing Yu Chun's muscular body. His entire body was covered in brown hair, but it turned out that his real identity was like that of Ben Duo E. He was a hairy man, and in a wonder, he gave Ben Duo E pointers. Hairy men were variant humans. They were different from humans. More specifically, they were 2 different races. Not even Fang Yuan knew about Yu Chun's true identity, as if he understood Ben Duo Yi's worries. Yu Chun, while paying close attention to his work, said, "You fool. Why do we hairy men have talent for goo refinement? It is because hairy men are born with refinement path down marks on our bodies. In fact, refinement path originated from hairy men. In terms of the history of goo refinement, we have been doing it for eons. Our accumulated foundations dozens of times deeper than that of humans. But humans have achieved superiority. They wiped out many hairy men, causing countless pieces of precious refinement path knowledge to be lost. Right now, the goo refinement techniques of humans are influencing hairy men. This is a huge error." Yu Chun continued. For example, when humans refine goo, they need a quiet environment that is isolated from the outside world. This allows them to refine goo safely. They have a higher chance of succeeding. But this is only focusing on short-term gains. They are not planning ahead for the future. Goo masters nurture, use, and refine. Nurturing goo is being familiar with materials and their connection to goo worms. Why do we feed certain kinds of food to a particular goo worm? Looking at the goo worm and its food, countless goo recipes can be discovered. Using goo is using and understanding the Tao marks on the goo worm. Refining goo is even more crucial. It is the handling of Tao marks. When refining goo, one should be surrounded by nature. Because the world itself has an endless number of Tao marks. It is like a baby in a mother's womb. The world itself is the best place to refine goo. If we can make use of the Tao marks of the world, in a way, the world itself is helping us refine goo. Borrowing the power of the world to refine goo. Ben Duo stared with wide-opened eyes. He was tongue-tied. That why Yu Chun's words were shocking. This was the first time Ben Duo had heard this theory. It was a huge inspiration and expanded his vision. That why Yu Chun laughed heartily. His eyes shined with brilliance. Ben Duo, you have learned the goo refinement techniques of humans. Even though they are effective, you have taken the wrong path. Learning from others can improve oneself, but the ways of humans is not suited for us. If you want to improve further and become a refinement path great grandmaster, you will need to go back to your origins and use the Gu refinement methods of us hairy men. I am willing. I am willing. Master Yumu Chun, please be magnanimous and teach me the Gu refinement techniques of us hairy men. Ben Duo, he shouted excitedly. He kowtowed non-stop, that why Yumu Chun laughed heartily. Don't be eager to make a decision. There is a huge risk in this. You might not improve. It could potentially harm you instead. I started feeding Gu worms at 3 years old. I touched and was in close contact with Gu worms at 10 years old. Without any instructors, I knew what food foreign Gu worms needed to eat and how to feed them. At 16, I used human Gu refinement techniques to refine rank 5 Gu with a 90% success rate. But this was a wrong path. When I was 22, I realized this point. I decided to start all over again, refining Gu in nature. When I was 138 years old, my nature Gu refinement techniques had finally reached a state of minor success. Now that I am 246 years old, my nature Gu refinement techniques has reached great success. I can comprehend nature and learn about astrology and earth veins. I can choose the most suitable area, making use of hidden Tao marks in heaven and earth to assist me in my Gu refinement. Right now, I have a 40% success rate in refining rank 6 Immortal Gu and a 5% success rate in refining rank 7 Immortal Gu. As for rank 8 Immortal Gu, limited by my cultivation level, I have not tried them yet. Such words shook Ben Duo Yu Mu Chun's success rate in refining Gu was too high. Ordinarily, the success rate of refining rank 6 Immortal Gu was less than 1%. For rank 7, the success rate was 0.1%, and for rank 8, it was 0.01%. As for Yumu Chun, he could refine rank 6 Immortal Gu with a 40% success rate. That was 4 in 10 attempts. And for rank 7 Immortal Gu, he could succeed once in every 20 attempts. Such a success rate would shock the world if it was exposed. This was the brilliance of nature Gu refinement techniques. And Ben Duo, he also realized learn these incredible technique. One needed ample talent and aptitude. Yumu Chun had incredible talent. He fed Gu worms at 3 years old. He was in close contact with Gu worms at 10, learning what they ate. By that age, he had already learned that Gu worms carried the traces of Tao marks. They were connected to all beings in this world. When Yumu Chun was 16, he could refine rank 5 Gu using human techniques. When he was 22, he realized this was not the way for him, and he gave up his achievements, restarting from scratch. From this point, one could see that Yumu Chun not only had talent, he also had ambition and aspiration. Furthermore, to learn nature Gu refinement techniques, one needed huge amounts of time and resources. When Yumu Chun was 138 years old, he achieved minor success. When he was 246 years old, he attained great success. Along the way, he must have spent an immense amount of wealth and time to practice. It was unthinkable. Aside from his talent, just the point about expending resources was unrealistic for Ben Duo, because he was a lone cultivator. When Gu immortals cultivate, they needed resources. This was even more the case for refinement path Gu masters. Without lots of practice, without enough resources, even Gu immortals could learn nothing. Most Gu immortals were flying masters, but only a small number were refinement path masters. Fang Yuan did not have higher achievements in refinement path. He only had become a refinement path quasi-grandmaster. Other than his limited talent, and that his efforts were not focused on this path, it was also because he was limited by resources that Yumu Chun saw that the tornadoes were calming down. He started to refine Gu that he stood in the air. His hair was swaying as he took out immortal materials one after another from his immortal aperture. He tossed these immortal materials into each of the tornadoes after careful selection. The tornadoes were like sharp blades. The immortal materials were grinded into powder. Quickly, Ben Duo, was dumbfounded. Ordinarily speaking, when refining Gu, the sets of immortal materials had to be measured properly. The timing in which they were used was precise, and the heat used to handle the immortal materials had to be managed. But Yumu Chun was very casual, leaving aside the forest of tornadoes. His technique in handling the immortal materials was very crude. He did not pay attention to the quantity of each material. He was like a terrible chef, randomly tossing in oil and other condiments into the dish according to his urges. If anyone else tried this method, Ben Duo, you would scoff in disdain. But when Mu Chun did it, there was an unspeakably smooth flow and natural feeling. His every moment was very ordinary, but there was an indescribable beauty, as if perfectly suited to nature. Deep and profound meaning was hidden in his actions. At once, Ben Duo, he had frozen in place. His eyes were staring without, blinking that he was completely dazed.